Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the first meeting of 2015 for the Thousand Oaks City Council. May I have you all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me? Hands over your heart. Begin. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you give us the roll call, please?
Councilmember Fox.
Here.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena is absent at this time. Mayor Pro Tem Price.
Here.
Mayor Adam.
Here. Thank you. We're going to change the agenda up just a little bit here, nothing too radical, but on the special presentation part, we're going to move New West Symphony up, and we are also going to move up the item 9B, the local emergency resolution, in deference to some of the members of the public, and the closed session item is being pulled from the agenda. Will not be held this evening. So with that, let me go down to the podium, and we'll go through some special presentations for everyone. All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to have Mary Olson come up and join me. Mary's the general manager of KCLU, our local NPR, National Public Radio station, and it is operates from California Lutheran University, and it's been in business now for, doesn't seem quite possible, but 20 years. 20 years of excellent broadcasting, and originally started in 1994, award-winning station, 250 Golden Mike Awards, Radio and TV News Director Association Awards, Associated Press Awards, and a very prestigious National Edward R. Murrow Award.
We're greedy.
Well, you're doing a great job. Doesn't get much better than that. And KCLU also named by the Associated Press's Station of the Year. And so we have the multi-talented Mary Olson here, who, by the way, was the winner of the Dancing with the Stars event at the New West Symphony. Yes, Mary did a great job, very dedicated. Mary, would you like to say a few words? And I'd like to present a proclamation to you as well. Accommodation in honor of the 20th anniversary of KCLU.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you for, may I say a few words? Thank you.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Whenever a microphone's in front of me, how can I not say something? Thank you, Mr. Mayor, so very much. And I want to thank each and every one of you, council members, city manager, Scott Mitnick. It is always such an honor for me to be here. And as I look around the room, I see so many colleagues and friends and distinguished members of the community, Natalia with New West Symphony, Andrea Gallagher with Senior Concerns, so many wonderful people. And I want to thank you all for making this station possible, because KCLU exists because of people like you, all of us coming together. And I just want, Mr. Mayor, and I want the council members to know, each and every time, every hour that we go on the mic and we tell 118,300 people, this is KCLU in Thousand Oaks. We want you to know how proud we are that we're licensed to Thousand Oaks, and that we are looking forward to the next 20 years of serving all of your constituents and of all of my fellow residents, and we'll do it with great pride and commitment. This means a lot to us. We want to thank each and every one of you for all of your support. Mr. Mayor, thank you so very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Wow, 118,000 people listening, huh? And 300. Won't forget them. Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to bring up Natalia Staneva, who is executive, very good, executive director of the New West Symphony. And Natalia, I know you want to tell us a little bit about your upcoming performance. I think you have someone to introduce to us as well.
Yes,
right.
thank you.
Dear Mayor, council members, and citizens of Thousand Oaks, as you know, New West Symphony is celebrating our 20th anniversary this season as well. It's the whole season. Our music director, Marcelo Ledinger, created a season where each concert has a new experience on the program, either a new artist, a new piece of music, or music that has never been performed by our orchestra before. So in collaboration with our founding music director, Boris Brat, we are presenting a program next weekend, which is on Friday, January 23rd in Oxnard, Saturday, January 24th in Thousand Oaks, and Sunday, January 25th in Santa Monica, that features works by Rossini, Tchaikovsky, Respighi, and a new commission work by composer Mike Garson. And Mike is perhaps best known for his relationship with David Bowie, which began in late 1971. He made his mark on numerous Bowie albums and has traveled thousands of miles on Bowie tours. In November 2006, Mike accompanied Bowie and Alicia Keys during a unique performance of Changes at an AIDS benefit in New York City. Mike's solid reputation for creativity and quality has motivated many other musicians to invite him to record on their albums, Smashing Pumpkins, No Doubt, and Trent Reznor. Trent featured Mike on several tracks of 9 Inch Nails. Since 1982, Mike has been a member of Free Flight, a jazz and a classical ensemble featuring renowned flutist Jim Walker. In addition to serving as the group's pianist, Mike composed most of their music. And today I found out that Mike actually has written over 5,000 pieces, 3,000 are classical, and he just played piano solo in the movie Gone Girl. So recently, Mike began to discover the effect and the power that music can play in the healing process. He is currently collaborating with Dr. Chris Duma, a renowned brain surgeon specialist, to explore those possibilities of healing. So next week, Mike is going to be featured not only as a composer, but also as a pianist for the Garson Concerto for Viola, Jazz Trio, and Orchestra based on a theme of Paganini. It will be a world premiere, and I'd like to invite all of you, including all the residents who are watching us today, to the world premiere next week. And New West Symphony's multi-talented principal viola, Lauren Chipman, will showcase her prowess as a classical and crossover performer. To get the tickets, please go to our website or call 1-866-776-8400. Today, I'd like to ask Mike Garson to take a role as a pianist today and introduce our piece that we will be performing next week. Please welcome Mike Garson. imagine that piece with the principal viola, jazz trio, and a full orchestra with the conductor. It will be wild. Please come and join us. Thank you.
Thank you for that interlude. Lovely. And thank you, Natalia. It's great to have New West as our resident symphony. Thank you. All right. Next, I'd like to invite Andrea Gallagher to the podium. Andrea is president of Senior Concerns, and January 31st is going to be designated as Caregivers Recognition Day here in the city. We have 66 million caregivers in the United States, and 80% of them are family members. And if you may not know you're a caregiver, but if you deliver groceries to your mom, if you drive your parents to the doctor, if you provide meals for some elderly folks, if you help around their house, you're a caregiver. I'm a caregiver. I know Andy's been. A lot of the council members have been caregivers, so it's a job that's not recognized, and it should be, and so we're going to have a Caregivers Recognition Day on January 31st, being sponsored by Senior Concerns, the Greater Canadian Valley Chamber of Commerce, and the cities of Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village, and Agora. So, Andrea, tell us a little. Well, first let me present you with a proclamation for your work for Caregiver Recognition Day. So I'm happy to give you that. And tell us a little bit more about the day.
Sure. Thank you very much. It actually all wouldn't happen if it wasn't for a lot of the city help, so thank you very much for that. January 31st from 9:30 in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon at Los Robles Greens, we will be having a day of uplift and enjoyment and recognition for family caregivers. It's not about education, and it's not about the care receiver. It's about the caregivers. They'll be finding the funny in family caregiving. We will talk about optimism. There'll be an opportunity to connect and share with one another. There's an amazing goodie bag for all that come, valued at over $250. A lovely luncheon. We've had a lot of community support for this. So it's at Los Robles Greens, as I mentioned, to register. And the intent is really just to bring family caregivers together and to give them an opportunity to identify themselves, because once family caregivers convene, powerful things happen. They begin to take some respite time for themselves, and they begin to seek the help that they need. So, and that helps both the caregiver and the care receiver. We also just produced a 4-page color insert that was in the Acorn last week. I have some copies outside there, and it talks about the event and some valuable articles for family caregivers. So I would like to first thank then Mayor Andy Fox and City Council Member Scott Mitnick for actually being part of a caregiver summit that helped us to identify activities that we could do, and also Mayor Al Adam and Councilwoman Claudia Bill de la Pena, who will be at the event to support family caregivers. If you are caring for someone who's age 60 or older, you can register, and you need to register in advance for this event at seniorconcerns.org. or at 805-497-0189. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. You know, if you're not a caregiver yet, you will be, sooner or later. So come on out January 31st and to Los Robles Greens and celebrate your caregiving nature. Let me introduce to you now the one and only, the inimitable Louis Wilkenfeld, our favorite director of Cabrillo Music Theater. I believe you have some lovely ladies who want to warble a tune for us tonight.
Absolutely.
Louis, great to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Wow, what a night of culture and class here, I think. I hope the rest of the evening is as sustaining as what you're seeing in the first half hour. It's an honor to share the stage with the New West Symphony, our neighbors and friends. A little bit to report here, first of all. Since the last time I saw you, we performed for the Naval Base Ventura County for the 8th straight year, holiday show for the troops. It's the 800-seat theater up there. We filled it. It was packed. We had an amazing crowd, an amazing night. And then we did the same show the next night right here in this theater and had a wonderful time. We also then spent several days during the holidays taking our Cabrillo Kids and our Cabrillo Teen Project to senior centers all around the community to entertain during the holidays. Before I go too deep into company, which is the reason we're here tonight, I want to tell you about our next show, Mary Poppins. We'll be moving back into the large Kavli Theater for that one. And we're very excited about two things. First of all, the Boys and Girls Club is partnering with us to bring in families who can't afford to see theater to come see Mary Poppins. So what's happening is companies have been making a donation to Cabrillo Music Theater. We're providing tickets to the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club is inviting those families to come see the show with the belief that if Mary Poppins helps families, so can we. It's been an amazing success so far. We started it during our fall performance of Memphis. We've been doing it through the holidays, and we'll be continuing to announce it through our production of company. Also, we just settled on this. It's going to be an event out in the front of the theater. We did a Carnival de Cabrillo last year. It was a big success. This year, let's go fly a kite. We'll have kite building and decorating and kite flying contests. We're going to have face painting and other artistic activities meant for families. Mary Poppins is all about pulling families together. It's going to be a big family event. It's going to be free. It's going to be right out in front of the theater on Sunday, March 8th, and we will be sending invitations to all of you. And of course, Oklahoma is our big summer show. We'll be relaunching our animal rescue program during the summer. The animals that we bring out who need homes, they like it better during the summer when the weather is dry. So they'll join us for Oklahoma this summer. And then we'll be announcing next season from the stage in this room starting next week when we open Company. Now, Company, Tony Award-winning Best Musical, revived twice on Broadway, successful every time. It actually changed the way musicals would work for the future. It was a revolutionary musical, non-linear, plays around with time, plays around with what are we seeing and what are in the mind of the main character. But I have to tell you, it's not avant-garde, it's not scary, it's actually really wonderful. Stephen Sondheim put some beautiful, beautiful music into this show, and George Firth's book is funny and touching and clever. Stephen Sondheim right now, of course, is more popular than ever. Into the Woods, the movie, just opened, became the biggest selling movie to open musical in history. So we're excited to be doing this show. It is for mature audiences only. We've been telling our families to leave their Cabrillo kids at home. And but the cast is a great mix of new faces and those from the community. We're very, very excited about this. Natalie, where are you? Natalie? Come on. I just want Natalie's got some materials here. I'm going to let her hand them out really quickly to the folks at the dais here. And what she's actually handing out are postcards for Company and information about Mary Poppins. And actually a flyer we've put together about the wonderful partnership between Cabrillo Music Theater and businesses. But what I really want you to look at is the last page. Because as you probably know, because you all read the Ventura County Star, one of our sponsors, there was a great story on Sunday. 2 Cabrillo alumni are opening on Broadway this Thursday night. 48 hours from now, they are starring in Honeymoon in Vegas on Broadway with Tony Danza. That's Jonathan Saxer and Catherine Rickefort. They've literally grown up on this stage, on our Cabrillo stage. We're so proud of them. And I have to say that when we went through our fundraising challenge of a couple years ago, it was Jonathan Saxer, who was then a freshman in college, who got into summer stock in her first summer of auditions. She sent me a check for $25 out of her very first paycheck as a working actress. It is a donation that we treasure. It was the very first donation to Cabrillo Music Theater's fundraising campaign, and it means a lot. So when we talk about these new faces and these great talents, these are the ones. They start here. They go to New York. They become stars. And we're proud of them. And we're going to introduce 3 more of them right now. It's January 23rd through February 8th. It's right here in this theater, the Shear Forum, a wonderful venue for Company, and it'll run 3 weeks, which is great for us. Tickets are at Ticketmaster or at the Civic Arts Plaza box office or at CabrilloMusicTheater.com. Theater ends with an R-E. And the Cabrillo Teen Project will be performing at all performances before the show. So please let me introduce you to our cast tonight. Cast members Chelsea Emma Franco, Ali French, and Jane Papageorge. And our musical director, Cassie Nichols, at the piano. Here is the glorious music of Stephen Sondheim's Company.
Crazy, you can drive a person mad, doo-doo. First you make a person hazy, so a person could be had, doo-doo. Then you leave a person dangling sadly outside your door. which it only makes a person gladly want you even more. I could understand a person if he said to go away. Doo-doo. I could understand a person if he happened to be gay. Doo-doo. Boo-boo, boo-doo. But worse than that, a person that titillates a person and he leaves her flat is crazy. He's a troubled person. He's a truly crazy person himself.
You know what? You really hurt my feelings that time, and I don't ever want to talk to you again about this.
When a person's personality is personable, he shouldn't ought to sit like a lump. It's harder than a matador coercionable to try to get you off your rump. So single and attentive and attractive a man is everything a person could wish. But turning off the person is the act of a man who likes to pull the hooks out of fish. Knock, knock, is anybody there? Knock, knock, it really isn't fair. Knock, knock, I'm working on my charms. Knock, knock, a zombie's in my arms. Oh, that sweet affection, what is wrong? Where's the loose connection? How long, oh Lord, how long? Bobby, baby, Bobby, booby, Bobby, you could drive a person buggy. You could blow a person's cool. Doo-doo. First you make a person feel all huggy, while you make her feel a fool. Doo-doo. When a person says that you've upset her, that's when you're good. You impersonate a person better than a zombie should. I could understand a person if he wasn't good in bed. Doo-doo. I could understand a person if he actually was dead. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Exclusive you, elusive you. Will any person ever get the juice of you? You're crazy. You're a lovely person. You're moving, deeply maladjusted, never to be trusted. Crazy person yourself. Bobby is my hobby and I'm giving it up.
Thank you, gals. We're January 23rd through February 8th, CabrilloMusicTheater.com. Great music by Stephen Sondheim. We hope to see you all at Company. Thanks for allowing us to bring some music into your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you for bringing the entertainment, as always. All right, let us move on to public comments. If you'd call for public comments, please. Ms. Lawrence?
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for public hearings shall be called and heard during the public hearing. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole, and all documents for City Council and the official record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. 2 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. And we do have 2 speakers. First up, John Fonte.
Good evening, Council. John Fonte. I'm the president of the Estancia Maintenance Association, one of the Dos Vientos Ranch Homeowner Association. Mine is along the Lynn Road side of the development. Late last summer, the president of the adjacent homeowner association, the Haciendas, along with another Estancia board member and myself, we met on site with city staff to observe the state of the city-maintained landscaping, which local residents pay for by way of their landscape and lighting district property taxes. Afterwards, the area was cleaned up a bit and some plants were added, but not enough. So I'm going to show you some pictures that were taken today, and I'd like to know why Dos Vientos residents should get inferior maintenance, which affects our property values. I'm going to have to go through these pretty quickly, so I hope TOTV, please, can you show these pictures? Okay, thank you. Because I do have quite a few, and you'll start seeing how have big holes.
Yeah, why don't you give him the handheld? Yeah.
A lot of empty spaces, roots, rocks. It just looks terrible. city had promised to do something about it, and they added some plants, but it really wasn't enough. I'm concerned that now is going to be the time that planting season is going to be coming up, and we're going to get short shaft again. And I'm sure there's other areas within the city where type things are also happening. Look at this area. I mean, it's just horrible. We have about a 3/4 mile stretch of property along Lynn Road. This is a sample. Make it seem like there's only a couple. Right to the end, because here, this last one, you can see there's also a sign that was just tossed over the monument, and then there's standing water and flooding right here at this last area.
Thank you, Mr. Fonte. Next up, Mr. Nick Kidwai.
I begin in the name of God, who's most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Nick Iqbal Kidwai. Last time I checked, still Director Concerned Citizens of Thousand Oaks since 91. No promotion, but at least not demoted a third time like my fellow, what did I say, fellow? Esteemed council member who has been demoted again at the LA Fire Department. I guess those people don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what leadership is, or maybe they do. TOTV can show another ugly person. It's a young man called Kim Dung. TOTV is sleeping. It's okay. It's been off from December. They cannot show it. There it is. I bring him up because last time in December I spoke, asked 3 simple questions in 3 different topics and was completely ignored by the council. I mean, you can only take so much abuse. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. I got this tie in Mission Oaks area, I forget what it is, Mission Wharf in San Francisco, in 2006 for $15, because it symbolizes what the council was at the time, not to listen to any citizen, not to engage with any citizen. And I thought it was extravagant to use it for, 1 or 2 meetings. Next year it will be 10 years, and there's no chance to retire it because you folks won't change. Even new people come, they make all kind of promises in the parking lot, Mr. Albert, Adam, but then they turn around. In fact, that one is more appropriate, TOTV. This is what we had going for us, saving taxpayer dollars. What a wonderful team it was. Unfortunately, never was to be true. What I'm trying to do is, we had 12 days for the executive team to enjoy. City Hall was padlocked. The only City Hall, probably, in the state or whatever. I asked last time we had a hearing, and this city is the only city, except for Moore Park, that gives $3,000 for illegal aliens to gather and find jobs. Only city. And I asked the staff, can we find out some other cities? There were no other cities, no answers. And so I think this is the only city that is closed for Christmas for 12 days, has all kind of holidays to not serve the public. Library is shut down almost for limited hours, and yet you say we are out to serve the public. In fact, you are there to serve the public, and you have a sign on the freeway that you clean the freeway. I looked at the warrants. City is paying $2,100 to clean the freeway. Our taxpayer dollars to get PR for the city. And then you say, Mr. Kidwai, you should be more lovable and happy. How can you be happy when your government is the pits, is worse than a third world country?
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. All right, let us move on to and that's it for public speakers. Let's move on to the consent calendar. Any items to be pulled? All right, hearing none, we do have a speaker card, and that would be Mr. Nick Kidwai. Yeah? Consent calendar?
It's pretty hard to hear. Did you call my name?
I did, sorry.
Okay, the consent calendar?
I'll speak up.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, sir, I appreciate your calling me. I do appreciate the staff putting my comments in the green packet. So, for those of you who would like to really know about it, it's in writing. I've talked about this for several years. It's an annual thing. Look at what has happened in Pasadena with a guy that was stealing for 7-8 years right under the nose. Right now in Oxnard, there is a budget deficit that is being discussed that was swept under the rug. So despite having the best of people, and I respect my fellow Fullerton graduate, Mr. Scott Mitnick's leadership, and of course, John Adams is just above par. But policy should be there. And the thing is that the item on the city treasurer is two-faced. One is investments, one is about the city treasurer. The issue of signing the checks for the city has never been discussed. And it's your fiduciary responsibility. I mean, these are not, dollars like these that you're talking about. These are hard-pressed dollars from taxpayers that are being spent, like the $2,000 to clean the freeway. You have a budget of $150 million, and it's possible that millions could be squandered and it would be too late. So that's why I ask, discuss this, have the staff bring forward as to what is the requirement for signing the city's checks. Do you require 2 signatures over $20,000, over $10,000? That is the issue. Then the second thing is, I've talked about this before, is the un-American minutes, people say, this guy is nuts, to show that Kim D-Jung or whatever that guy's name's picture over here. But folks, read the minutes. It's just the agenda, the minutes, public participation, these are the basics of this wonderful flag that we salute, and that's why so many immigrants and people flock over here like myself. The minutes will do not reflect what is said by anyone. And like Mr. Albert Adams, and he was a candidate. If he's running for candidate, you can look at the minutes and see he said this about this, he said this about the stop sign. He was on this side of the auto mall sign. But now the minutes don't say that. But the ego thing is so big. The December meeting where the mayor pro tem and all that are elected, the whole speeches are transcribed there. So on one hand, there is the time to transcribe every word as if somebody is going to read that, and they are like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, but you won't put one line. And the example is, I was surprised that Jim Friedel is on your executive team. The CRPD, go to their minutes. That's a local body. They not only allow public comments in the beginning, they allow at the end, and their minutes reflect the American spirit and the wonderful spirit of the people of citizens of Thousand Oaks.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. All right, hearing no items to be pulled from the consent calendar, get a motion. Mr. Fox?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I will move the items on the consent calendar. And just for the viewing public and the folks at home, the Speaker did bring up something that's recently been in the news. City of Thousand Oaks, just so you know, we go through an outside auditing process with an outside auditor that we rotate. It's not even the same auditor every time. That auditor reports directly to the City Council. I happen to be one of the council members that sits on that committee. City staff is really outside that process. In addition, we have many other checks and balances within the City of Thousand Oaks. So I've been around long enough to say that that would be impossible. It could never happen because things do happen. But I want to assure the viewing public and the folks here that there are many, many checks and balances within the industry standard that some of these other cities did not practice, that Thousand Oaks routinely practices. In fact, we are a leader in the state in terms of our financial management. So I just wanted to put that out there. And with that, I will move the balance of the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Motion to move the consent calendar. Vote, please.
The motion carries 4-0, and the two ordinance titles. K is an ordinance adjusting and setting rates, fees, and discharge limits of the City Wastewater Division, and item L is an ordinance adjusting and setting rates and fees of the City Water Division.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Mr. Mitnick would like to make a comment as well.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, under public comments, one of the speakers raised some concerns about the public landscaping, the landscape and lighting district, and our public works director, Jay Spurgeon, will follow up with him to address the issues raised, and we'll also follow up with the city council and let you have answers to the questions asked. During the consent calendar, there was a question about the signing of city warrants or monitoring the city's bills and so on. We do have a council member, currently it's Councilmember Bill de la Pena, who does go through the warrants and does sort of random reviews. So there is that layer that's built into the process here. No, but you don't sign checks, but you review the warrants. And as far as signing the checks, if our finance director, John Adam, doesn't mind, if it's okay with the mayor, he can comment on how many people sign the checks and that type of thing. It might be just good for the public to hear it, given what's gone on in another local government, if okay with the mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Adams.
Well, I want to be careful because I don't want to sound like this is a computer thing, but signatures are facsimiled onto checks, so there's two signers. It's not really who is signing the check, it's who is in the review process of who is authorizing or approving payments to local vendors. I think it really steps back and you have to go through the purchasing process. If you're aware, as far as contracts, what's approved by the council, there are thresholds, purchase orders are issued. Those payments are authorized and approved by many layers, including the program people, the division managers, department heads, and ultimately accounting and deputy finance director. So the physical signature of checks is not necessarily occurring unless it's a special check, but most of them are going through a signature wheel, if that would make sense. So I want to be careful to say that two people are signing a check when those two people aren't physically signing every check. So I can come back and really give you more of a detail, but I thought I want to clarify that.
That should suffice. Thank you. All right. We have a department report that's been moved up. That's 9B. It's the declaration of local emergency resolution due to some of the winter storms that we suffered with. Jay Spurgeon will be giving that report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. With me at the dais is Senior Civil Engineer Jim Taylor. This item is a result, really it goes back to the Springs Fire of 2013, when there were over 24,000 acres in total burned. About 300 acres of watershed area were burned in the Dos Fianos area. Following the fire, and working really since then, city and other agencies, including federal agencies, county, and city staff have been working with the HOA and a number of residents to put forth mitigation measures that are needed to help protect the residents and public infrastructure in the Dos Fianos area. The HOA has implemented a number of mitigation measures throughout the burned areas. And unfortunately, due to the ongoing drought, there's been not as much regrowth of the watershed as we would have hoped to date. This graphic shows the fire itself. Of course, we recall that the fire did burn all the way to the Pacific Ocean, and then when the winds turned, burned back into Hidden Valley and into the Newbury Park area. There have been impacts from mud and debris flow from a number of storms since the fire. The first one really was in March of 2013. There was also some impacts from a storm over the Halloween weekend. And then most recently and most significantly, a very strong storm, very high intensity storm on December 12th that ultimately impacted almost 30 residential properties, HOA property, as well as city infrastructure from that storm event. Now, this is more of a close-up of the Dos Vientos area, and you can see some of the red circled areas indicate where some of the impacted properties were. Essentially almost the entire ring of burned area around Dos Vientos. There were certainly a lesser number of residents that had a greater impact than others, primarily along Via Santana and then on several of the streets on the east side. In response to that storm and the impacts that occurred, the city manager did declare a local emergency on December 18th. This provided access to federal emergency watershed protection program, which I'll mention more about in a moment. On December 22nd, the governor declared a state of emergency. And although it did not really open the door for any additional financial assistance locally, that declaration did provide some emergency funding to Caltrans for highway repairs both in our county and other areas of the state. So the National Resources Conservation Service is an agency of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they administer this federal emergency watershed protection program. This program, the purpose of it is to provide immediate temporary mitigation measures following really a situation such as we have in the Dos Vientos area. And NRCS staff, as well as city staff, on several occasions have inspected and reviewed the impacted areas from that storm. The NRCS, have prepared a damage survey report. That report is part of the agenda package tonight, where they've made recommendations for temporary mitigation measures for 6 of the affected properties, the residential properties, as well as a number of locations in the HOA property. This program does provide a level of grant funding from the federal government, although there's a 25% local match required, and the program does have some immediacy to it. Once the funding agreement is approved and in place, there's a 10-day time frame to get the improvements installed. So it's a fairly fast program to get accomplished. So just quickly, the kind of improvements that NRCS have recommended. There are several inlets in the HOA area that they're recommending trash racks, and there's a little depiction of that here. At one location, there's a debris catcher, which is another treatment that is essentially steel posts that are embedded in concrete, and these help hold back larger rock and debris before it enters and can clog the storm drain system. And then lastly, within the residential properties, there are recommendations for sandbag diversion structures, and in a couple of locations, K-railing. And these structures are intended to divert any future mud or debris flows around the private backyards and structures and try to shunt that material out into the public right-of-way. So this has been a fairly quick process since that storm. The NRCS is currently preparing a reimbursement agreement that they will provide to the city. The funding is under review and should be approved later this week. That's actually, that effort is in Washington, D.C. There is an informational meeting that we are going to hold with the affected property owners, those 6 properties, as well as the HOA. That's tomorrow afternoon at the community center out in Dos Vientos. We do need to work on getting rights of entry from each property owner so that our contractor that ultimately the city would hire can work on those properties. The contract would be on an emergency basis with the contractor. We'll likely get proposals from several contractors this week, and then in conjunction with the NRCS reimbursement agreement, at the appropriate time execute that contract. Again, there's a 10-day window to install these improvements. Now, apart from that, those specific improvements, we are also, for the benefit of the larger Dos Fianos area that is adjacent to some of the burned areas, the city will be staging pallets of sandbags at the community center, and then in conjunction with the HOA, we'll be providing an informational piece that should be sent out to the larger area, perhaps later this week or next week, providing some guidelines and some information on how residents can protect their property from future debris and mud flows using these sandbags. There's also, the county also provides sandbags at Fire Station 35, which is on Reno Road. I'm sorry, 34. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spurgeon. Questions for Mr. Spurgeon? Ms. Bilda-Pena?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Spurgeon, the grant would be for 6 homeowners, you said? Or is the meeting only going to be with 6 homeowners, but there are others who are entitled to this?
The damage survey report provides the scope of work and the specific locations for these temporary mitigation measures that are being recommended by NRCS. In addition to locations on HOA property, there are 6 other residential properties where these recommended improvements would occur.
And the photos you showed us, is that HOA property or is it city property?
Those were HOA property. The first 2 photos of the inlet and then the debris catcher, and then of course the third was just showing a depiction of where sandbags might occur on one of the private residence properties.
So all of the recommendations for improvement are on private property and not on city property?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Fox, we're good? All right, I have 5 speaker cards on this subject, and as I call your name, come down to the podium, and would the second person come down to the chair behind the podium? And we'll go with Heather Scully first, followed by Aaron Bell. Good evening, Ms. Scully.
Good evening. My name is Heather Scully. I'm a Dos Vientos resident in Thousand Oaks. Usually when I'm attending events at the Civic Arts Plaza, I'm here to watch my children perform in either dance or chorus. Tonight I'm here to defend the safety of my family and the value of our home. On December 12th, we suffered the second severe mudslide on our property. This time was worse because there was damage to the interior of our home, which is going to take months to repair. As you know, the first rain event was in early March of 2014. Since then, my husband and I have been meeting and corresponding with city officials to come to a solution on an engineered fix for the hillside that will make us feel safe and prevent future mud debris on our property. My husband has spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this project, and it has become a part-time job. We had great concerns after the March event that the same thing would happen again. And I am sorry, but not at all surprised to say that our predictions came true. We were made promises by city officials that you would finish construction on a solution by mid-October of 2014 before the El Nino rainy season started. It is now January 13th and nothing has happened. The December 12th event could have and should have been prevented had the city lived up to its promises. If they had, I would not be standing here now. The city has always told us that lives and property were paramount and that you would fix this. Not only did you do nothing to prevent this from happening again, but you think it's okay that it happened again. I am asking you for a moment to put yourself in our shoes as a homeowner and a parent who has crying children at night because they're scared of rain. What if this was your home where there is severe property damage? What would you expect your city to do? You would expect them to fix the root of the problem. You are our next door neighbor, and like any neighbor who is causing damage and problems to other neighbors, you're expected to fix the issues. I certainly hope that more sandbags on our property is not the solution. We already have a 65-foot wall of sandbags on our property that did not stop the December 12th event from happening. Please consider this.
Thank you, Ms. Scully. Aaron Bell, followed by Keith Wintermute. Evening, Ms. Bell.
Hi. The last time I was here, I asked the city's help to send civil engineers and geologists to come up with a plan to help stabilize the mountain, and I was very encouraged when 2 days later there were city employees assessing the mountain and the damage. However, today I spoke with 2 men who were sent by the city who were at my house that told me the plan was to put a 3-foot-high sandbag wall that would start at the base of the mountain and would run the length of our backyard. He said the plan was to allow the mud and water and debris flow from the mountain to flow through our yard and out to the street. This idea would make it completely impossible, one, for my children to safely play in the backyard, and it's just not a solution. We want and need something done to help stabilize the mountain, not just allow it to flow out. In the storm that occurred on December 12th, the mud and debris would have completely buried any sandbag wall that you plan to put in place. It would have done nothing to keep the mud and debris from coming into our yard and home as it did. My family and I, as well as our neighbors, are asking that more be done that will actually help us, and that something be done to help stabilize the mountain. In the statement that was made earlier with this whole plan, it said that you will continue to support the HOA to help develop other mitigating measures. We've had many different professionals at our house who have all said the same thing, that the solution for us is to replace the wrought iron fence that came down during the storm with a block wall to prevent anything from coming in. However, our HOA is not allowing that to happen because in their bylaws it says we must have a blue wrought iron fence running the backside of our property. They're saying that we're going to need to have a vote and let it last 30 days, and we may not be able to get this built for 30 to 60 days from now. And I and my family are willing to pay for this mitigating procedure in order to protect our house and home from any further damage. We know more rain is on the way, which brings the threat of more mud and debris flow. It seems completely unfair to all of us that the current solution is to allow the mud and debris from the open space to come into our yard and threaten our home and scare everyone on our street, including my kids. We ask for a real solution to this problem.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Keith Wintermute, followed by Gunther Kilfoyle. Hello, Mr. Wintermute.
Good evening. Thank you, members of the City Council. I'm Keith Wintermute. I'm a resident of Villa Santana, and we are actually next door neighbors to the Bells. I spoke to you last month on our situation. I'm sure many of you saw the article in the paper that came out on Sunday. I'm just learning of the initial solution suggestions that are going on here. I will be attending, although I do want to mention that I was not invited to that meeting, which I'm rather surprised with, since we sustained over $30,000 in damage to our own home. I will tell you that just to give you an idea what the Bells are talking about, I have a photograph taken the day after in their property. Their 5-foot metal fence was completely inundated and buried by the mud that came off the wall. So I can't imagine that a 3-foot sandbag situation is going to be adequate as a stopgap situation. But I want to concur with what she's saying. What we're really looking for is some long-term mitigation solutions. I know I spoke with Kathy Emmons, I know she's working hard with you all. She is the head of the Emmons Company, part of the HOA on the western side. And, her comments are that she considers this a solid first step in terms of beginning to deal with this issue. But, of course, as homeowners, we're not only interested in getting through the season, we're also interested in getting through multiple seasons in terms of dealing with this problem until such time as the vegetation returns adequately to resume this situation of protection as it currently stands. So I just want to encourage the council in voting to approve for this as a start, but recognizing and working with the HOA, I know that they've hired a geologist and 2 engineering companies that are assessing and trying to come up with more lasting situations for the upper part of the mountain area so that we can keep debris from actually coming through and clogging the drains. I don't think anybody would consider sandbags to be a permanent solution in their backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wintermute. Gunther Kilfoyle, followed by John Fonte. Mr. Kilfoyle?
Hello, my name is Gunther Kilfoyle. I am on the board of directors for the Western Dos Vientos Ranch, and we are also very concerned about getting a solution so that we can help the homeowners that we also represent to move forward with this situation. We know that we are also restricted by the CC&Rs that we have to uphold in terms of what sort of physical changes can be made to the people's perimeter fencing, and that is a grave concern of ours because we can't make exceptions for this terrible situation, but we do want to have some sort of professional engineered solution so that we can help all of our homeowners address this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. John Fonte.
John Fonte, Thousand Oaks. I live in Dos Vientos. I do not live by the fire zone, but I would like to bring up some comments. I was the president of the One Master Association, the one that Gunther is on now, back in 04-05 when we had a slope failure in Dos Vientos. And the developer turned out to act responsibly. And they had to recut the slope and spend an awful lot of time and energy to save this house that was threatened. Now, at the time, I think a lot of people felt that when the development was put in, that slope was just cut initially too aggressively. So I think this actually leads to a point that I think is where these homeowners are asking you for help. And I think there is definite credence to that because the city signs off on development plans. You guys had big staff, and I mean big staff, reviewing the Dos Vientos Ranch and every other development project. You guys should be anticipating these problems. Mr. Fox, he's a LA Fire Department chief. He sees fires all the time and the mud that comes after the fires. So, why did you guys let the developers get away with, shoddy or cheaper mitigation efforts? That just shouldn't have happened. So I see two parties that could be at fault, the developers, and I think the city in their review process. As to what the prior speaker said about he was not invited to a meeting, I feel like the same way because our Department of Public Works director is trying to keep me from attending the meeting tomorrow with the residents. I have no idea why, and all I want to do is observe. But I would encourage the residents to seek whatever restitution you can. I do believe there's a responsibility with the developer, the builders. There are two developers here in this case, and builders, and also the city.
Thank you, Mr. Fonte. That will be our final speaker. Mr. Spurgeon, do you have follow-up comments to make?
Regarding the informational meeting that is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, the residents who were invited to that specifically were those residents that the NRCS had recommended improvements on their properties. Some of the residents are specifically protected by other improvements in the HOA area. So, for instance, not every resident along Via Santana, although there were impacts from that storm to many of those homes, not every one of them ended up having recommended improvements per the NRCS surveys. So that's why not everybody received that invitation. The intent of that meeting really is to speak specifically with those residents where improvements are recommended, so that we can talk about logistics and the details of moving forward with the construction work on those properties. So that hopefully that clarifies what the meeting tomorrow is about.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spurgeon. Questions for Mr. Spurgeon? Ms. Bilde-Pena?
Thank you. Mr. Spurgeon, how many properties did the NRCS survey for damage?
They were out on more than one occasion, and they actually did survey all 28 of the properties that we're aware had some impact from that storm.
And of the 28, they only recommended 6 for improvements.
Correct, along with several locations in HOA-owned property.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Price.
Yeah, I think maybe there's some confusion here. The 6 homeowners that have been invited to this meeting, it is on their properties and their properties alone that these mitigation measures, and I think we're talking about sandbagging in this case, will take place. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that is a reason that only those 6 homeowners were invited to this meeting, because we are going to want to speak to them about the what will take place on their property.
Yes.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yes, Ms. Bilde-Pena.
The question I have is the wrought iron fence versus a suggested block wall. Is that one of the recommendations by the NRCS?
No.
Okay. Did the NRCS recommend anything for that particular area?
Their recommendations for the upper slope areas, or the HOA owned property that's above the backyards of these various properties. Their recommendations were for protection at several inlets, storm drain inlets, and that was the debris cages, the debris racks, as well as those debris catchers. So they made no recommendations for changing any of the perimeter fencing from wrought iron to any other type of material.
Do you know the reason why?
The
reason I'm asking is we have a homeowner who seems to truly believe that a block wall there might have prevented some of the damage. So I'm wondering whether the experts would agree or disagree.
This emergency watershed protection program and the types of improvements that the NRCS engineers were looking at, their focus is on immediate temporary mitigation measures. So they're not looking at improvements, long-term improvements, major infrastructure improvements, such as block walls or major rehab to inlets. So their program is, again, for temporary mitigation, immediate measures. I would point out that block walls would tend to divert the mud flow or the debris flow. If block walls were to be installed by property owners of the HOA or whomever, it would have to be carefully evaluated to make sure that just the problem wasn't diverted from one property to another.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Spurgeon, of the $135,000 potentially on the table here, break down for me the disposition of those funds.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that there is a green packet item. As this process has moved fairly quickly, the NRCS actually updated their damage survey report after the printing of the agenda packet. So there is as part of the green packet item, there's some revised pages from the DSR that revised some of the scope of work on some of the properties. It also adjusted the total funding. So the total funding for their recommended improvements is $130,000, and then there's again a 25% match requirement from a local match. That would be $32,500. But in terms of the total recommended improvements, the value can be broken down. The improvements that are being made on HOA property, it's about $75,000. And then the improvements on the 6 private properties total about $55,000. So that's how it breaks down.
All right, thank you. That's what I wanted to know. All right, if there are no further questions, looking for either a discussion and or a motion on ratifying the agreement between the city and the NRCS for this $130,000. Mr. Fox.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to move recommendations 1 through 5 on the declaration of local emergency December winter storms and adopt the associated resolutions.
Discussion to the motion? Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mayor Adam. I'm certainly going to be in support of this motion. I think that while the majority of the damage was on private property, there is a nexus to the public infrastructure. We did have mud and debris flows that made it into the city's systems there. I was particularly moved when I read the part where it talks about a public safety issue and that the potential for loss of life due to damage from watershed impairment exists. And while this may not be the responsibility of the city, we can't overlook the fact that the potential loss of life would be penny wise and pound foolish not to approve this. So I'm going to support that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Ms. Pena? All right. Yeah, it's pretty hard to say no to $130,000 in federal funds that are leveraged 4 to 1 when we only have to put up 33 of it. So we'll support the motion as well. Can I call for a vote, please?
The motion carries 4-0, and that would include revision in the supplemental packet to the recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. That is approved. All right. We are now going to call for a public hearing, and this has to do with the operating hours for the McDonald's restaurant on Los Arboles. Ms. Lawrence, if you would call for the opening of the public hearing, please.
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 8A, appeal of a planning commission decision to approve change in operating hours for McDonald's restaurant, development permit major modification 2014-70043, located 1908 East Avenida de Los Arboles. The appellant is Frank Millar. The applicant is McDonald's, doing business as Voss Enterprises. This public hearing was continued from December 16, 2014. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the council regarding this public hearing. All documents for City Council and the official city record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. We have 3 speakers this evening, and pursuant to council standards, the appellant and the applicant will have 15 minutes with a 5-minute rebuttal. And the remaining one speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Mr. Chua, how are you, sir?
Good evening, Mayor Adam, members of the council. For your consideration tonight is the continuation of an appeal hearing that went before you in September of last year. The appeal was that of a Planning Commission decision approving extended operating hours for McDonald's restaurant at the Oak Brook Shopping Center. A copy of the staff report for the September 9 hearing is provided to you as an attachment for in this staff report. As you recall, the hearing was continued to give opportunity for the applicant and the appellant to work out a compromise on operating hours for the McDonald's restaurant, wherein both parties agreed to revised operating hours from what was originally approved by the Planning Commission. On page 2 of the staff report, you'll see a table comparing what was approved by the Commission and the hours agreed upon by the parties involved. To sum it up, closing hours for the drive-thru was reduced to midnight from 1 a.m. for Sundays through Thursdays, and the opening time on Sundays was also changed from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. I'm sorry, 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 a.m. These new hours are reflected in a proposed council resolution, which is attachment 5 of the staff report. Staff is recommending that the City Council approve in part the appeal, which revises Planning Commission approval of the change in operating hours for the McDonald's restaurant. And staff's ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Mr. Chua?
This one.
Mr. Box.
This is a mediated agreement. Both parties have agreed. No dispute. Basically, it's just coming to council for final adjudication. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Villalpena.
Was it mediated by an actual mediator or just between the two of them?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. The staff used the COPS program, which is the Community-Oriented Police and Problem-Solving Unit that the Council approved as a possible use for neighborhood disputes back in fall of 2008. And so we contacted the head mediator of that program, and that was Anthony Matthews. And both Anthony Matthews and Kyle Marks appeared and mediated the matter with 2 representatives of McDonald's and 2 representatives for the neighborhood.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I do have speaker cards from the appellant, Frank Millar, followed by the applicant, Debbie Voss. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I just want to thank you for setting up the continuance and facilitating the discussion that took place. I think it was our ex-mayor wanted to show leadership and emphasize leadership in his campaign, and the council stepped right up and unanimously supported the lead there, and I just want to thank you for that. I have nothing more to say. I'll answer any questions if anybody has anything.
Thank you, Mr. Millar.
I'm sorry. I do have something more to say. I wanted to thank various elements of the city, including the city clerk's office, who's been very, very supportive, the sheriff's department, from Chief Hagel, Captain Freihoff, Joe Rodriguez. I mean, it just goes on and on in terms of their support for, shall we say, civilized solutions here at every turn related to all the things going on over there. And let's see. Oh, and code compliance, lastly. Jeff Ware has actually been out in the parking lot at 5 a.m. in the morning. So we are getting our money's worth out of the groups from the city that I've just mentioned, and I really appreciate it. And we all do as residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Millar. Good to hear. Ms. Voss. Well,
hi, I'm Debbie Voss. I'm the owner of the McDonald's. I live in Simi Valley. You know, we went to mediation. It was the first time I've ever done this, and it was a long day. We were there probably for 8 or 9 hours, and Frank and I are kind of hard-headed, but it was a great process. And I'm just glad that's over with, and we're going to continue to communicate. And it's the first time I've ever done it, and I really appreciate your help. And I can't say thank you enough. And the people that were with us on a Sunday afternoon, and the guy that did the mediation, and Patrick opened up his heart, and we were there till almost 5 o'clock. And I just wanted to say thank you very much.
thank you, Ms. Voss. Stephanie, is it Deeney? You good? All right. And we'd have one card from Diane Johnson, which we'll put in the record as well. All right. Mr. Chua, anything? Council members? All right. Mr. Price? Mr. Fox, did you have...
I'm just going to make a motion, unless there's...
Go.
All right, very good. I'm going to move the recommendation and the approval of the changing operating hours of McDonald's restaurant to the mediated agreement outlined in the staff report. And as I've said several times, this public hearing process doesn't lend itself for really good public dialogue. And so I am so very proud of the parties that decided to take place and put their time and their efforts into that. Because ultimately, you made a decision that affects your business and your property. And that's the whole idea of this mediated agreement. So thanks to the mediators and the COPS program, and I'm just very pleased. And I know the council agrees with me, because it's always good when folks can work it out on their own, and then we just basically affirm their decision. So with that, I'm going to move for the staff recommendation and the change in the hours.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Comments? All right. I just say that I'm glad that the two parties were as cooperative as they were. It was a bit of an arduous process, but with a good outcome, I think, for both sides. So with that, we have a motion to approve the hours. Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. And thank you both. We have a second public hearing this evening on a general plan use element. If you would announce that, please, Ms. Lawrence.
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 8B, an amendment to the general plan land use element from institutional to industrial, and amendment to specific plan number 7 from high school site to employment park, and from city property to employment park, concerning properties at western terminus of Rancho Caneo Boulevard, 2498 Caneo Center Drive, and 1205 Lawrence Drive, LU 2014-70053. Applicants are Jim Street Properties and SBA 2014-70148. The applicant is the Caneo Valley Unified School District. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding this public hearing. We have one speaker, which is one of the applicants, who will be allowed 15 minutes with a 5-minute rebuttal. The yellow light will display when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Mr. Jeff Spector, Senior Planner.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We're here tonight to talk about an amendment to the land use element of the general plan of the City of Thousand Oaks from institutional to industrial, and conforming amendments to the Rancho Caneo specific plan. All of these changes involve 3 sites, 3 properties in the Rancho Caneo area. This is an aerial photo view of the 3 properties that are involved here. And this is a map of the general plan land use element, and it shows all 3 sites. As I said before, changing from institutional to industrial. The specific plan designations here for 2 of the sites, the first 2 on this list, is changing from city property to employment park, and the site at the end of Rancho Conejo Boulevard is changing from Conejo Valley High School site to Employment Park. This is an aerial view of the property on Conejo Center Drive. And this is a ground level photo of that property looking to the northeast. Another ground level view of the property. This one happens to be looking to the west. This site happens to be owned by the Conejo Valley, my chair just fell, Conejo Valley Unified School District, and it is designated as city property in the specific plan because the school district originally planned to relocate its maintenance and operation yard currently on Kelly Road to this location. And the city transferred this property for the maintenance yard to the school district. Another item is this property is deed restricted to school purposes only, and that deed restriction expires later this year. Now the district is interested in selling this property, and it plans to use the proceeds to purchase another property. And the buyer of this site wants the deed restriction lifted before the close of escrow, and that buyer is interested in developing an industrial project. This is the second of the three properties, an aerial view. This one happens to be owned by the city. This is a ground level photo of the property looking to the east. Another photo looking to the north. I should point out here that this site has power lines running right through the middle of it. Some particular points about this property. It's owned by the city, as I mentioned, and the city acquired this property as part of a development agreement with Chappelle Industries. The site's a difficult one to make use of because it has it's constrained by steep slopes. It has a very irregular shape, and as I mentioned before, it has power lines running through the middle of it. It has been declared by the city as surplus in the past, and the proposed industrial employment park designations will allow for future uses that are compatible with the surrounding land uses. This is the third of the sites, an aerial view at the end of Rancho Conejo Boulevard. This is a ground view looking mostly to the west, northwest, west. It's a graded pad like all of the others. This property is owned by Chappelle Industries. It has an interesting history. It's a designated high school site on the specific plan because the school district originally was planning to relocate Conejo Valley High School, the continuation high school, to this property. But ultimately the school district decided not to relocate the school at this location. And this property was eventually transferred to Chappelle Industries as part of a land swap. And that land swap allowed the city to acquire the property that was used for the MSC expansion. So this change to Employment Park is sort of a housekeeping matter because a high school site designation for the property is really no longer justified. In conclusion, I'd just like to point out that these changes are consistent with a number of policies in the general plan, including the policy that says that industrial development should occur in the Rancho Conejo industrial area, and a policy that says that industrial employment shall be encouraged, and that these changes will encourage development with industrial uses and result in industrial jobs or related jobs. I should also point out that the Commission recommended approval of these amendments at its December 8th, 2014 meeting. So the recommendation for this case involving these three properties comes from both the staff and the Planning Commission that City Council adopt a negative declaration to approve the general plan land use element amendment, approve the specific plan amendment, and then lastly to rescind the deed restriction on that Canal Center Drive property. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Spector. Questions? Ms. Villalpena?
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Good evening, Mr. Spector. I just wanted to confirm that currently the city parcels in question or parcel in question, we don't have any specific plans for them, right?
We do not.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what other areas in our city have a designation of employment park?
Well, that's a designation that's peculiar to this specific plan, number 7, and it really is parallel to an M1 zone in the city, and pretty much follows the uses that are allowed in the M1 zone are allowed in this any property designated employment park, but it's peculiar to this specific plan.
Yeah, because I don't recall seeing a designation of employment park in a general plan before, so that's why I was curious. Now, the site in question had been proposed previously for an RV storage facility. Would that still be possible with the new designation? Or
I believe so, yes.
yes, Mr. Prescott? It will or it might? Did you say it will?
It will be permitted.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right. We have an applicant here this evening from Conejo Valley Unified School District, Joel Kirshenstein. Evening, Joel.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Joel Kirshenstein on behalf of the Conejo Valley Unified School District as the co-applicant, and also Dr. John Sand is here representing the district. He's not speaking this evening unless you insist that he come up and say a few words. But we're both here to express our appreciation to staff for the work that they've done on this property. None of this is easy, and this is part of the district's asset management plan to, as staff indicated, to relocate the Kelly Road facilities, both the Kelly Road facilities, the M&O and the alternative high school. So there's three efforts that are all going on at the same time. This, the Kelly Road effort that'll come before the council in a few months, and then the acquisition of properties that a property we're pursuing now for the relocation of the M&O facility. So again, we just want to thank everyone for the work that they've done, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to attempt to respond to those questions, and look forward to the conclusion of what has been a long trail of getting to a point that we're pretty sure we'll get to in a few months.
Thank you, Mr. Kirshenstein. All right. Mr. Spector.
I have nothing else to add.
All right. You do have a rebuttal time, Mr. Kirshenstein, if you have. I doubt if you do, but you have that ability. No rebuttal, I would assume. Yeah, you wouldn't rebut yourself. That's right. Thank you. That's nice. Good point. All right. Meeting number 2. I'm getting better all the time. Hey, got to have a little levity, don't we? All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to close this hearing, and I am going to ask for a motion on these items. Mr. Price.
Yes, as much as I'd like to hear Dr. Sand speak, I'll make the motion and we'll move along. And I would move that we adopt the resolution to approve the negative declaration, which is recommendation number 1, and that we also approve recommendations 2 and 3 as well.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Motion to approve staff recommendations. Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, thank you. And now we have a department report about the stop sign on northbound Westlake Boulevard. Jim Machiko, our senior traffic engineer, will give us that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a neighborhood request regarding the stop sign control for northbound Westlake Boulevard onto eastbound Valley Spring Drive. Here's a location map that shows the intersection in a red circle within the North Ranch region of Thousand Oaks. Westlake Boulevard runs north-south. Westlake Boulevard runs east-west. Here's an aerial photo of the intersection with a dark red arrow indicating the movement we're considering this evening. And here's a ground view level of the intersection with the stop signs in place. Received a number of public concerns regarding this, the stop signs that are there. So we performed a traffic investigation to determine the appropriateness of the stop signs. And we shared these findings with our Traffic Commission last June. The Traffic Commission considered public testimony, and after deliberation, they made a recommendation to City Council to change the stop sign to yield sign control, which finds us here this evening as all stop sign installations and removals require City Council approval. We'd like to point out this location previously operated as a yield sign prior to June of 2006. And that change to the current stop sign was made or initiated in January of that year at a traffic commission meeting when a number of residents came out and voiced traffic and pedestrian safety concerns along Valley Spring Drive. So the question is, why change the stop signs back to the previous yield signs? We have a number of conditions that are present that support this change. Number one is the low traffic volume. Number two, the lack of collisions or no collisions here over the last 5 years. And number three, the low number of vehicle conflicts for that northbound right turn movement where it often appears these vehicles are stopping for no reason. We did have a concern regarding the possibility of increased speeds on Valley Spring Drive with a change to the recommended yield sign. Our data, historical radar speed data on Valley Spring Drive shows that this should not be a concern. We have data that shows that when the location operated as a yield sign and compared the data to the current stop sign speed data, both speeds on Valley Spring Drive operate at 40 miles an hour. So with this concern regarding possible increase in speeds on Valley Spring Drive, we brought this item back to our Traffic Commission last November for further discussion before bringing this forward to City Council. And the outcome of that is a recommended radar feedback sign facing eastbound traffic as shown on this exhibit. Be facing eastbound traffic where there's an existing speed limit sign, and it would target the speeders that might be coming in off Westlake Boulevard. So with that, this concludes our staff presentation. The recommendation is in your agenda packet, and we'll be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. Questions? Ms. Bilda-Pena, how about that?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Machiko. I have a question regarding the change in 2006. Can you tell me why the residents, and you kind of mentioned it, but could you elaborate why the residents at that time wanted a change from yield to stop? And which residents? Are they the same who are now wanting to change back, or were there different residents?
Well, back in 2006, yeah, there were a number of concerns on Valley Spring Drive. I believe it was triggered by a traffic collision that occurred further downstream. As a result of that, staff performed a detailed investigation along the entire segment of Valley Spring Drive from Westlake all the way down to Lakeview. And we took a look at basically every intersection. A number of recommendations were made for that street, including restriping, additional bike lanes. There was a multi-way stop sign that was installed further downstream. I believe it was at Fairmont due to sight distance reasons. And when we took a look at this location, we took a conservative approach as regard to when you come in from Westlake Boulevard and the angle at which you might have to turn your head to see conflicting traffic. So we took a little bit more conservative approach at that time to support putting in the stop signs.
Okay, so 8 years later, we have different residents then now wanting it to be restored or back to the yield sign, and those are different residents.
Yes, we have a mix. I think there's some that were for the stop sign back then, but now due to the change or the operation that they've experienced over the years, they feel that the location should probably be changed back to the prior yield sign.
And given that there really isn't that much of a change in traffic safety compared to the yield sign, why would we want to change it back to yield? I mean, the speed hasn't changed. There haven't been any accidents. Why would you want to do that then, when before there was an accident?
Well, we took a look at the traffic numbers there at that location. We made observations, and it's basically what we consider a low-volume location. So when you look at the traffic coming from Westlake Boulevard and making that right turn, more times than not, they don't have any conflicts with the eastbound through traffic that comes off of Westlake Boulevard. There's a southbound right turn movement that would be the conflicting movement with that northbound right turn traffic. And our findings and observations show that we could have just as effective right-of-way control with the yield sign as we do with the stop sign.
The argument can also be made that the stop sign is working, and why change it?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Price.
So am I to understand that originally, when the stop sign was installed there, that it didn't necessarily meet the warrants, that we had particular findings that allowed the decision to be made to put the stop sign there?
Yes, it didn't meet the traditional traffic volume warrants. Normally when stop signs go in, it's generally going to be based on how heavy of traffic is flowing through an intersection. But sometimes there's other considerations that we do take into consideration, such as sight distance. And in this case, one of the changes that was made was a new bike lane. And when the bike lane was added shortly after this intersection, it shortened the merging zone between the right turn traffic and eastbound traffic. So that was played into the consideration here.
And originally, did we have right-of-way conflicts there? Did we have traffic collisions that were occurring there?
Our data doesn't show that there was, but we just took an extra conservative approach on this.
Got it. Thank you.
Just a quick question, if I may. If there's been no variance in speed, whether it be the yield sign or the stop sign, it's both average about 40 miles an hour, why are we recommending a radar feedback sign?
This is basically due to the concern that was expressed at our traffic commission meeting over a possibility of increased speed. So we wanted to see if we can address that. And the radar feedback sign is a tool to address speeding concerns.
Yes, Mr. Finley.
Yes, good evening. Additionally, historically, that street has had speeding concerns over the years. It's been in front of Traffic Commission before. All of the additional striping changes, everything we've done out there really haven't impacted the speed at all. So at this point in time, this was kind of, we've tried everything else. Let's try a radar feedback sign. Again, the speed limit out there is 35. Our speed data shows that people often travel a little faster than that.
All right, good enough. Mr. Price.
Yes, thank you. Would that be a temporary speed feedback indicator, one that can be moved, much like the ones that we have on Lynn Road that we move periodically?
That is correct.
Oh, Ms. Bilda-Pena.
I didn't watch the Traffic Commission meeting, but I'm just wondering if was there a suggestion made to try it out for a year and then measure traffic again and see how it is going and whether it should be taken under consideration again? Just a progress report of sorts?
Generally, when we change traffic control, we don't. There was no discussion of using this as an experimental test case to see what would happen. When we make a change in traffic control, we generally think it to be a permanent change.
All right, thank you. I have 2 speaker cards. First, Megan Clark, followed by Patrick Welch. Hi, Ms. Clark.
Good evening. I live on Valley Spring, near the stop sign. I'm here to ask you to reject the proposed resolution and leave the existing stop sign as it is. I disagree that there is a need to make a change. As far as I can tell, there has not been a reason articulated for the need for this change, other than you have some residents who have expressed that they don't like having to stop at the stop sign or that they are perhaps annoyed by it, which was funny because one of the emails that came through to you in the supplemental packet actually used the word annoyance. I just disagree that that is not a good reason to change a stop sign. The Traffic Commission staff expressed that to make a yield sign safe, one of the key things is to have a slow approach to the yield. I would suggest to you that the approach speeds coming off Westlake Boulevard, especially in this zone, are not low speeds. We've got lots of people speeding up and down Westlake Boulevard. I also have a concern about the speeding along Valley Spring. It's probably my fault that the suggestion was made about the radar feedback sign. I know that Mr. Mashiko tried to offer an olive branch of some kind to help alleviate my concerns about the continued speeding on Valley Spring. Most importantly, one of the issues I raised in June was that there is actually a school bus stop that's about 100 feet from the current existing stop sign, and the response was, well, we're not aware of a school bus stop. I was surprised that that didn't come up in the staff packet to you. I was able to find it finally online today, and it looks like it's the Kalina Middle School bus stop. If council does decide to proceed with the stop sign change, I would encourage you perhaps not to make a change in that area until you can coordinate with the Durham School Services folks to perhaps relocate that bus stop so you don't have people swinging right through that yield sign right up on the behind of a school bus stop that's 100 feet past the stop sign. Finally, 2 related issues is that at the Traffic Commission, when I attended, at the end of the meeting, I was told that this was not something that could be taken to council. Only because I had an inkling that that perhaps was not the case. I pursued that a little bit. You may wish to advise the Traffic Commission on exactly what things are appealable to council or what would be taken to council so that other residents aren't perhaps inadvertently misled. And finally, I know there were some gentlemen sitting next to me, and I believe one of them I recognized from the Traffic Commission. Somebody mentioned something about a waste of time or wasting somebody's time. It's not my intent to waste anyone's time. I just disagree with the removal of the stop sign, and I hope that you leave it be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Patrick Welch.
Good evening. I was asked to come to support the Traffic Commission's decision to remove the stop sign. To give you some background, I think what I can help with is background and knowledge. Background is I was originally involved in the development of North Ranch. I was in charge of their insurance operations. We had, thousands of employees in Thousand Oaks. I don't speak for Prudential. I speak for myself, and I speak for North Ranch. And that's who I think you should be listening to. North Ranch does not want this stop sign. The Homeowners Association was against it when it was originally put in, if you go back and look at the minutes. An individual moved here from New York City, convinced the Traffic Commission, moved into North Ranch, convinced the Traffic Commission to put these stop signs in along Valley Spring Road, and then moved out of North Ranch 2 to 3 years later. I've lived there for 30 years. I built a house there. I've had 2 different houses there. I know most of the people who live in North Ranch. They do not want a stop sign there. I walk that area every day. If the city council could turn to your left and see if you can look without turning your body, and see if you can look back like this. I have one eye. I'm blind in this eye. I've been disabled from Prudential and retired from Prudential for almost 20 years. When even looking back like this, can see enough that I should stop or yield at that stop sign. And all I'm trying to tell you is what North Ranch wants. I think Thousand Oaks, I was around in the original development. We all know what Prudential's involvement was in development of Thousand Oaks. For those of you who weren't here, Prudential donated thousands of acres in Thousand Oaks and North Ranch. Most of the open space was donated by Prudential. Prudential had 3 major offices. We had 3 insurance offices here in town. All I can tell you is what the original intent was to make North Ranch kind of a high-end community, an area that would be easy to get into and safe. And these stop signs that you put up on Valley Spring Road, no one wants them. And they are annoyed by them. People get annoyed. Hundreds of people get annoyed.
Mr. Welch, thank you for your comments. Thank you, sir.
Questions or? Thank you.
All right. Very good. Mr. Machiko, any response?
Yes, I would like to address the comment about the bus stop that's that would be the south side of Valley Spring Drive, just before Oak Grove, the first intersection. We did observe that the bus does stop there for about 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon. The morning time is about 8:12 a.m. to pick up one student, and then about 3:45 it drops off one student. It's parked curbside. The loading and unloading occurs off-street. The bus, if needed, it's a full-size bus, and it can use the stop and warning lights if needed. During those 8:12 and 3:46 period when the drop-off and pickup occurs, that's generally when there's a light volume of traffic coming into Valley Spring Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. Any questions? Ms. Beltran-Pena.
Thank you. Given that Westlake Boulevard has really a high rate of speed, most people go faster than 45 miles, 50 miles an hour on Westlake Boulevard. It's almost used as a highway. And Chief Hagel, I'm sure you would concur with that. So given that it is a very fast street and you're needing to turn right to Valley Springs Road, I understand that residents don't want to be inconvenienced by a stop sign, but safety has to be paramount. And what Prudential did many years ago really has no bearing on this particular stop sign. So I'm just wondering whether it would be amenable to check the traffic after 1 year. I mean, I'm not particularly enthused about needing to change this, but depending on how the vote goes tonight, is that something that we could do in 1 year from now to check the traffic, measure traffic, and see what the impact has been so far, or within 12 months?
We could perform another traffic study. Like you said, probably in intervals, maybe 3 months, 6 months, and a year. Present those findings, whether it be to the Traffic Commission or back to Council if desired, and provide a status report.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Price?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point too much, but having served on the Traffic and Transportation Commission for 4 years, I happen to have received a little bit of an education that I thought I already had, being in law enforcement for as long as I have. I thought I knew things about traffic, but I now know that we don't use or stop signs to control speed. I guess I knew that then too, but they're used to control right-of-way, and it doesn't appear that we're using it for that purpose there. It appears that the intent when it was changed from a yield sign to a stop sign was to control speed. So that seems to me that we're using it for the wrong purpose. The way that we go about solving problems like that is through education, and that is writing tickets, quite frankly. And I'm sure Chief Hagel would be able to get his traffic department to spend a little bit of time out there, particularly if this were to get approved, immediately after the yield sign went back up. And the education program is a big piece of educating drivers that conditions have changed, and they're going to have to change as well. So that really wasn't a question, it was more of a statement. But you can agree with it if you'd like.
Yeah, I can, and I think it's important to point out you're kind of hitting the ultimate three prongs of safety for people coming in and out of the community, and that's the engineering, which you're hearing from right here, both sides. The engineering is putting it to a yield, which I'm comfortable with, and the next is the education. You're putting up a speed radar sign. That's your education too. And the third point is me. That's where I come in, and that's the enforcement side. So first we want to work with the engineering and the education, and if that doesn't work, enforcement tends to usually work very well.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I've been through that traffic area many times, and what I see is people rolling through the stop sign, to tell you the truth, as if it were a yield sign in all practicality. And I do think that, to make that right-hand turn, you have to slow down. So that tends to slow you down one way or another. And I think with the addition of the speed indicating sign, I suppose that's good. And I think Ms. Bilderpenny has a good idea. Come back to us in a year and tell us if it's safe. Yeah? Yeah, we don't want anything that's not safe. But I think it's going to be fine myself. So if there's any questions or discussion, or how about a motion? Try the one next to you there. No. Come over here. There we go.
Okay.
Mine's on.
No, it's not.
Hey, Mr. Fox, come on over here. I got a live mic for you.
Testing.
There we go. Coffee break's over. All right. I'm going to move the recommendations 1 and 2, and note that the Transportation Commission voted 4-0 for this recommendation. It's also being supported by the Police Department, Public Works Department. And I do have a letter here in our packet. Council has a packet that is submitted by maybe the current, but certainly the former president of one of the large homeowner associations. So, but I did want to comment. Anybody has the right to come to council and bring items to the council, and if they were misinformed. But anytime there's a commission recommendation, ultimately the council has the final authority. So, while it doesn't appear necessarily we're going to be able to meet your interests tonight, certainly had that opportunity to come down. That's important. So I'm going to move the staff recommendations 1 and 2.
Ms. Bill Pena.
Also include Ms. Bill Pena's suggestion to bring back.
Within 6 months, Councilmember Price
6
would
months.
recommend.
Bring back a report.
All right, so we'll add that.
And that would include the solar panel RF radar feedback sign, correct? Because solar powered, okay, that's right.
All right, so we'll add that to the staff recommendations. And if there's no further discussion, we have a motion on the floor. Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, thank you, everyone. We do not have any committee, commission, board reports. We don't have any council issues to discuss. So let's go to the city manager, Mr. Mitnick. Do you have any follow-up items for us?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, no additional follow-up items from the meeting tonight. Next council meeting will be in 2 weeks on January 27th, and we're still putting together the agenda. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. We have an adjournment this evening in memory of a very great man in the city of Thousand Oaks, Mayor Emeritus Alex Fiore. I'd like to ask Councilmember Fox, who I know was a close friend and to Alex, and also he was a mentor to Mr. Fox, to carry out that adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alex Fiore passed away in 2002. The city just recently completed celebrating our 50th anniversary as a city. And Alex is the one and only council member who served for that first entire 30 years. He is the longest serving and will be the longest serving council member and mayor in Thousand Oaks City history now that we have term limits in place. Alex served for 7 terms, 30 years from the city's very beginning, retiring in 1994 when I took this very seat in 1994 on my election 20 years ago. I was sitting right out there in the front row when Alex made his final comments. He died of cancer in 2002, and Alex was certainly one of our founding city fathers. His wife, Katie, still lives here in Thousand Oaks, along with his family, Tom and Rick and Norma Lays. And there are many things that Alec left. There are a few things that have been named in his name, Fiore Fields, and the Alex Fiore Teen Center. But beyond the namings, Alex was a citizen politician, so to speak. He spent every Saturday morning, I believe for his entire 30 years in office, at the Jan's Mall. He set up a little card table, and Alex would do everything from your tax returns to discuss city issues. He was a very unique individual. The other thing that if you saw some of the commentary in the city with our 50th anniversary, was responsible for really the lion's share of open space in our community. He negotiated the Wildwood Mesa acquisition. And so all that open space of Wildwood that we hike in and we use for recreation, we can thank Alex Fiore in part for that. Civic Arts Plaza was one of Alex's visions, this building we're sitting in today. This was a man with great vision, great love, great care for our community. And so it's fitting that each and every year from now until the end of time that we adjourn our very first meeting in the year, the very first meeting in the new year, to Mayor Emeritus Alex Fiore. And with that, I thank the mayor and wish Alex and his family the very best. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox, for those heartfelt words. I had the privilege of serving with Alex Fiore on a committee later in his life. He was a man of great character and great humor, and it was a real privilege to serve with him. With that, we're going to conclude our meeting for this evening, and we will adjourn to January 27th. Good evening, and thank you.